So exams are coming and you're probably trying to think about how you should start studying for your math. The word study itself is a little bit misleading because study kind of implies that you should read your notes and look through your examples and flip through what you've done this year, and that is in fact the worst way to study for a math exam. The way you want to study for a math exam is you want to practice your questions. So don't study for your math, practice your math. Go through your notes and find the examples that are listed in every day's notes and go over those examples by covering up the answer, retrying the questions, and then comparing your answer to the answer you have in your notes. Go through questions in your textbook, especially the ones with answers given, with full solutions provided. And go through those, try the example, compare it to your answer. Look back and forth. Try different processes learned in each unit. So ask yourself, what different things did I learn how to do in chapter 1 or in chapter 2? And go through and try one question from each of the different processes in that unit. Look through your study notes if you've created them. If not, creating study notes is an excellent way to study for your exams as well. In the 2D course, what topics do we have on our final exam? Well, we have different chapters, and each chapter gives us a new topic. Chapter 1, we learned linear systems and lines. So lines and systems is the first chapter that you need to learn. And all you're doing in that chapter is you're solving graphically, you're using elimination, and you're using substitution to solve a linear system. So it's a short chapter. We did a little bit of it again in chapter 2 and 3 with shortest distance, but it doesn't cover everything, so it's important to still go over chapter 1. Chapter 2 to 3 is analytic geometry. And the chapters on analytic geometry cover many different topics. It looks at lines, length of a line segment, slope, midpoint. It also looks at parallel and perpendicular lines. And then we're given some specific terminology like the median, the altitude, the right bisector, and we also find the shortest distance. Near the end of analytic geometry, we talked about how to find the equation of a circle, and we also looked at properties of quadrilaterals and how to prove different properties using the different equations that we studied in that chapter. So you need to go through all of those topics for analytic geometry and go over your notes. Each note has really good examples that show you how to do each of the types of questions. There's also online posted some good review card questions. I think they're called cue cards in our notes online. So you're going to go through those questions. They have answers written in there as well, and you're going to practice all of those topics to get ready for the analytic geometry section. Chapters 4 to 6 were all about quadratics. So chapter 4 is just the properties of quadratics. Chapter 5 is how to factor and how to expand an equation. And chapter 6 is solving problems with parabolas. So the whole idea about quadratic functions is covered in chapters 4 to 6, and there's a lot of specific details for those chapters that you need to know. We talked in chapter 4 about all the properties. Chapter 5, how to factor and expand. Chapter 6 is all about, changing from one form of the equation to the other, completing the square using the quadratic formula, and solving word problem questions by finding maximum and minimum values or by finding the roots of the equation. So it's important to go over quadratics, especially for your exam, because a good portion of our course does cover the chapters 4, 5, and 6. Chapter 7 to 8 was trigonometry. Chapter 7 at the very beginning is similar and congruent triangles, which depending on when you start your review, you may or may not have covered yet. But chapters 7 to 8 is trig, and the trigonometry chapters that we did before Christmas covered how to solve for angles and sides of right angle triangles by using the Pythagorean theorem and by using SOHCAHTOA. And then it looked at acute triangles, which do not have a right angle, and it talked about how to use the sine law and the cosine law to solve for missing sides or angles. Included in that chapter are angles of depression and angles of elevation, and there are also a couple questions with more than one triangle where you have to solve for one measure in order to find the other one. So those notes have good examples there that you can go over as well. The chapters 7.1, 7.2 that we've ended with this year are looking at similar and congruent triangles. The topic of congruent triangles is not in the textbook, but it is very well covered in your workbook, so you can refer to those notes in order to review for those topics. When we get ready for exams and for our ISP, you're going to get an exam review booklet. It's going to give you questions to practice that you haven't seen before on each of these topics and space to write down extra notes that you haven't maybe summarized previously. So you're going to use your exam review booklet and you're going to start early. You're not going to leave exam study until the very last minute. You have also already received an orange piece of paper with suggested textbook questions. So as you go through each chapter of your review and you look at the examples and you look at the notes and you think that you're ready, you're going to go and try those questions in the textbook to see if you are comfortable with solving questions you haven't seen before in those chapters. When you get answers, you're going to look in the back of the textbook right away and see if your answers are correct. If they are almost correct but not exactly correct, that means they're not right. So you need to go back and see where you've made tiny errors that could result in either rounding mistakes that change your decimals a little bit, or you've maybe misread the question and created an improper equation. So take a look at the questions in that orange sheet of paper that was given to you earlier for review and start working on those early on. The best way to study for math or to prepare yourself for a math exam is to do it a little bit at a time, to do it over a few weeks, and to not leave it to the last minute, because it's very difficult to study a process when it is kind of time sensitive and when you're rushing things. So we have trigonometry in the end. I'm going to post some review videos on each of these main topics. I'm going to start with quadratics because it's the largest one and it's the one that students had the worst time remembering important processes. It was a big unit and we had 3 different tests on those topics, and I know that a lot of you were asking me for additional review on quadratics, so we'll start there and I'll add, as the weeks go on, exam review for each of the other topics. The lines and systems questions and the review videos for those are already up on the website. They're old videos, they're not wonderful. I'll try to do a better job this year with the clarity of the videos, but it's a new thing for me as well, so bear with me as I work through this with you.